Hello and welcome back to more BookTube with Swan. Is that a good name? Books with Madeleine. No. Madeleine Reed. Oh, anyway. I'm going to be talking about my favourite Bizarro books. Now, this doesn't mean that I haven't really enjoyed others, because I have. It just means that these particular ones are ones that I loved, and I haven't even touched on Bizarro erotica. That is a thing. But I will do that in another video, so on with the show. Bizarro is a genre that has been described as the literary equivalent of a cult movie, but the thing that I love about it is that there is such a wide variety of what comes under the Bizarro umbrella. There's something close to weird fiction, there's kind of bizarre gore, there's it's so many things. So really what it comes down to is personal preference. If you find a style of Bizarro that you love, there are others out there like it. Personally, I think I prefer slightly less in your face, like kind of punk type stuff. That's not really my thing. I understand that other people like it. It's not really my thing. I probably prefer maybe more gentle weird. That's not to say that I don't like dark. I do like disturbing things, but I think I just prefer I don't know, some emotion behind it, and it's difficult to explain. Okay, so I'm going to start with Death Confetti by Jennifer Robin. This isn't technically Bizarro, but the author lives in Portland and I forgot to include it in my favourite biographies. So it's as biting as William Burroughs and as rich as Anais Nin. It's about the author's journey from her childhood to really the middle of nowhere to Portland, and her artistic journey as well, the different kind of artistic things that she's done and the strange characters that she's met on the way. Next is Gutmouth by Gabino Iglesias. It's a kind of noir cross with surrealism, which is always going to be a win for me because I love both noir and surrealism, and there's a dystopian element to it as well. And you kind of, it's a very smooth story. Like, it's not bitty, it kind of runs all in one understandable arc, and you kind of get to understand where the character is coming from. It's not just needlessly all over the place. The next is Like Jagged Teeth by Betty Rocksteady. She was published as part of the new Bizarro author series at the same time as me, so I have a special place in my heart for Betty's work. But this is a really good novella. It's there's a lot of heart to it. It's not kind of all surface. There's some real depth behind it. The character is suffering from guilt, anxiety, and lots of different issues. The story kind of lurches in a really disorientating manner. It begins when she's being chased on her way back from the pub by these men, and she's scared, and then her grandfather pulls up in a car and offers to give her a ride back, but her grandfather's been dead for several years. But she's frightened, she's excited to see him again. However, it's happened, and she gets into the car, but instead of taking her home, he takes her to his flat, and there are some very strange undercurrents that she's not sure about, which become more and more pronounced as the story goes on. The next is the short story collection Cartoons in the Suicide Forest by Lisa Cantoral. There's a real rich poetic flavour to all of the stories. It's very erotically feminine. She takes inspiration from Jean Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast, Russian same-sex marriage, partners who are taking heroin, and a couple of very dark stuff. There's some surrealism, but it's all very beautiful. It's really beautifully written. You get a real sense of a kind of strange sexual magic chemistry happening in all of the stories, and it's a really good read, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. The next is Mr. Fox by Helen Oyeyemi. This particular book was not published by one of the Bizarro publishers in Portland, but as I was reading it, I can always tell a good book because my brain kind of crackles like popping candy with ideas, and it's so bizarre that I couldn't not talk about it really. It's almost a collection of short stories, but it's also almost a full-length book. The short stories are all related to each other, and the common thread of the story picks up in every single one of them. Essentially, it's about a man who's a writer who tends to kill off his female characters, and he's having a conversation with a woman who is possibly a character of his, and you kind of get a sense of their dynamic. Is she his real ex-wife? Did he murder her? Is she just a character? And she, in each of their different scenarios, they imagine different scenarios. She's doing a different job, or she's in some cases she's just a collection of organs, I think, if I remember rightly, and it gets quite strange and quite dark and very intriguing. The next is Aerostat to Hooting Yard by Frank Key. He's a British writer who is sort of quite unknown. He's just been reading his bizarre short stories that he writes on a blog, Hooting Yard. He's been reading them on a kind of local radio station, and then it got picked up by Pseudopod podcast, which I recommended in my first BookTube video. What I'll do is I gathered them together in a blog post on my own blog, so I will put that in the description below so you can listen to them all. He's kind of like the Max Ernst of silly. There's a real like silly quality to his stories. There's a kind of tumble of surreal ideas. There's a real absurdist quality to them. I think he just sits down and just writes whatever comes into his mind, and whatever comes into his mind is very peculiar, but it's very funny. There's a kind of 20s feel to a lot of them, like he mentions Flappers and Bix Beiderbecke, the jazz musician, so I enjoy that as well. I couldn't do a video about Bizarro without mentioning Carlton Mellick III. He was kind of, I guess, the founder author of Bizarro in a way. He was one of the first ones published by Razorhead Press. My favourite by him is The Haunted Vagina, which sounds like a very silly title, but it's surprisingly sweet. It's a really sweet story, and that's what I really enjoyed. There's like some grossness to it, don't get me wrong. It's about a haunted vagina and a man who goes up her vagina to investigate what's in there. But it's a sweet story. The world that he enters is surreal and very pretty, and it's kind of about relationships and what makes people drift apart. And it's just like a genuine exploration of a relationship that doesn't really work out. So no, I really liked it. I thought it was very good. And I will finish with possibly my favourite book. If we're going to go from sheer length of time that I've loved a book, it's probably going to count as my favourite, which is Alice in Wonderland. I don't need to say too much about it because everyone knows Alice in Wonderland. If you haven't read it yet, it's actually very entertaining. It zips along quite quickly, and it's got some very entertaining characters, and a lot of the jokes are kind of logic based. Like Alice is actually the sane one and everybody else is a bit crazy. So that's my video on my favourite Bizarro books, and I will see you again soon. Bye!